Greetings and welcome to this light edition of an episode of Captain's Yacht, a Star Trek The Next Generation review series done by two inner city high school teachers. The purpose of these light episodes is to demonstrate more intermediate levels of video editing and videography for students that have the basic understanding of how podcasting works and decide they want to expand on their knowledge. An added purpose of our light episodes is to break Scholar Beta's and my discussions of Star Trek The Next Generation from a 90-minute podcast episode into smaller, more manageable pieces for you, the YouTube audience. So let's beam aboard the Captain's Yacht and see what we're all talking about today. Alright. While I'm resetting the transporter, let's talk about our third and final episode for our time together today, the battle. So,
Hey, and thank you for sticking with us. Those of you who are hanging out on the regular cut of the episode, who've hung out with us for all 60 minutes so far, we appreciate you. So here we go. Without further ado, episode 9 of Star Trek The Next Generation, The Battle, taking place on Stardate 41723.9. So The Battle is an episode where Picard, slowly falling under the mind control of Ferengi Damon Bach, attacks his own crew aboard the bridge of his old starship, the Stargazer. Dun dun dun. So the genre here, we are dealing with mystery, and because it involves some mind control, some psychological thriller, and I'm putting thriller in the biggest air quotes of all time because we're going to talk about how slow this episode is. The tropes, we have another mind control trope, just like Lonely Among Us, except instead of blue electricity that controls your mind, now it's a red, roughly beach ball sized device that I have no idea how it works. It's not important, I suppose. And then the other trope that I love, and I love this trope from childhood, but it's the convoluted revenge plot. I mean, this is a very convoluted revenge plot. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but honestly, this episode is it's pretty focused around this concept of Picard reuniting with the Stargazer. There's not a lot of other kind of plots or things going on in this piece. It's pretty centrally focused. So, yeah, let's talk about a little bit of behind the scenes. And you're going to start off by telling us a little bit about this episode's former title, which I completely agree with you. I like quite a bit better than quote unquote the battle,
yeah,
because that makes it seem like this is going to be action. And this is
far
not
from
action.
it.
No.
Far from it. So, the original title of this episode was Ghost Ship. I like that title better. With that in mind, extra scenes were written to explore the Ferengi culture because, as we mentioned, the Ferengi are featured here. They were featured in Last Outpost. Kind of got a bad rap on that one. They attempted to correct here. The scenes were written, but they were never filmed. Um, this is another, well, this is an attempt at saving costs, but it goes the other way. Originally,
Mm.
the Stargazer was supposed to be a redress of the Enterprise A from Star Trek The Voyage Home. Um, but then they decided that they could build this new ship using twice the amount of nacelles, twice the amount of warp engines. Um, but they were put into a bind because they originally wrote and filmed the episode with it being a Constitution class, which is what the original Enterprise is. So they had to come up with a new name that would work well for overdub. And because Geordi LaForge clearly says into the camera Constitution class, they did a dub and they needed something that started with C, so they said Constellation class instead. So if you watch that episode
Nice.
really closely in that scene, you can see that there's an overdub. So
Nice.
with that in mind, what works here? If you take a look at any example of public history in Star Trek The Next Generation, everybody involved talks about this pivotal point happening in the history of production where they departed from central and ensemble stories and in favor of more character focused stories. And I would argue that this is the first attempt to do that. You're going to see that again with Worf in a later episode where it's done, I would argue, slightly better. But they try it here with Picard, where it's very clearly one person, one cast member is the clear protagonist of the story, and the plot revolves around them. So this is very much a Picard story. It's expansion on his backstory. He's in a vulnerable state, um, a state where he's unwillingly doing something against the wishes of his crew, which was something we saw in Lonely Among Us.
Yep.
Yep. Captain of the Stargazer, the tragic history and somewhat tragic backstory of Picard himself. There's something that could have worked a lot better, but it's heavily implied. We don't see it as much as we should, where he second guesses the choices he made as a young man, which I think is a really good. They come back to that again in the episode Tapestry later on in the
Oh
show.
yeah.
But yeah, but there's hints at that in this episode, and that is what, from my perspective, works for me. So, dear scholar, what say you on that?
Okay, so I'm actually thinking about this honestly from a writing standpoint. It's fascinating that you say this is kind of a shift where they go to writing about a character, where they really focus tightly on one character instead of giving everyone something to do in every episode. And honestly, I think it really shows because this is probably one of the most tightly focused, thematically focused episodes we've had so far. And its focus is the past, which is again why I like that title, Ghost Ship. That's the battle doesn't really lend itself to the idea about the past as much as Ghost Ship does. It also adds to that era of mystery too. So really missed the boat with this title. Um, so again, we got this thematic focus on the past. First, we learn about Picard's past Starfleet service, right? As the episode continues, we get both the Stargazer and the episode metaphorically exploring loss in the past. We explore the idea of the Damon's son, who was killed in a battle with Picard, and we explore the idea of the Stargazer, which was lost, killed, quote unquote, um, in that same Ferengi battle. So both characters, Damon Bach, Jean-Luc Picard, they're dealing with something that they've lost in their past. Um, the main difference seems to be, to me, where I'm seeing the difference between these characters is the Picard is at peace with the past. I think he even says something about he hasn't thought about the Stargazer in such and such amount of time. I wish I would have written
Mm-hmm.
that down. But Damon Bach is not at peace, somewhat understandably, with the past. And so, therefore, Bach uses his mind control device to disrupt the peace Picard has with his past, making him second guess his decisions while he was briefly in command of the Stargazer there. So, yeah, I like this one. From a writing standpoint, I think we are really focusing on a thematic issue, the past. We're really focusing on two characters, Picard and Bach, and contrasting them. I think that works really nicely. And then on top of that, man, we have a lovely model in the Stargazer. We have a lovely set redress in the Stargazer's bridge. We
Mm-hmm.
have a lovely backstory with Picard having to take control of the Stargazer, performing the Picard maneuver, which is amazing. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then how he had to abandon ship and float in shuttlecraft until they were picked up and rescued. So I think that's all really nice. And in fact, expanding the captain's backstory is probably the best part of this episode. The fact that we get the Stargazer and how cool the Stargazer is actually way cooler than the episode itself. Like the
Yeah.
ideas and the concepts in them. So yeah, I think that's really what's cool in going for this one. I guess I do want to point out the Picard maneuver too, and how I think it is hilarious that the Picard maneuver is both this um, way to jump to light speed really quickly and then make your ship appear like it's in two places at once, so the enemy vessel doesn't know where to fire. And then also, more informally, the Picard maneuver is pulling down on your uniform so it looks all nice and taut before you go into an official situation. So I love both of those ideas, and the Picard maneuver feels real. I mean, the starship tactic, that feels like an actual real starship tactic. Um, I wish maybe it could have come back in another clever way somewhere down the line. We will get like a Riker maneuver, and I don't think there are any. We might have a Beverly Crusher maneuver, when she hides in the sun's corona. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
like that various crew members are going to have their time to shine and show that they know how to use the Enterprise to its full effects. And I think the Picard maneuver gets that kicked off. So I think that's really cool. You have any thoughts on the maneuver itself? Do I care way too much about that?
No, I like it a lot, and they kind of do bring it back, sort of, in the finale of Picard season 1. They do bring up, yeah, they do bring up wanting to do the Picard maneuver, and he says we don't have technobabble thing, and then
I
the
have no memory of that, and I just watched all of that. Huh?
yeah,
Hmm.
well, that's a testimony of how that show was done. But yeah,
Hmm.
she says that the Dr. Girardi, the cyberneticist, says we could really use some Picard maneuvers right about now. To which Picard replies, "We would need some sort of technobabble thing." And then she pulls out the holographic thing and says, "You mean like this?" And then yeah, but they do attempt to bring that back, and I do want to bring yeah. We there is a day of reckoning for Picard. I want to make sure our viewers understand my perspective on Picard, but that's a discussion for another time. You bring up the Picard maneuver, and I got to bring up that was done. It was coined that after the costume change. I'm pretty sure after the costume change in season 3, because it went
Yep.
from a one-piece spandex suit to a two-piece suit, because Patrick Stewart's chiropractor said you cannot continue shooting this show in spandex. It hurts your back too much.
Interesting.
So yeah, no,
Hey,
I just wanted to bring that up. Go ahead.
okay. Question: it is Data who solves the Picard maneuver, quote unquote, right? Or is it Riker? Help me. I just had a blank on this.
They,
Because remember, Riker turns to Data and says, "Data, we need to figure out a way to counter the Picard maneuver." And Data says, "There
yes,
are none such counter moves known." And then I think Riker says something to the effect of, "Figure it out right now." And then he does. So
well,
I think it's also clever that Data is the first one to do it. I think that's kind of interesting.
yeah,
Not sure if
no,
that's
and
commentary, but it's something.
you had mentioned when's the next time it's going to be used, and the because of my frustration with Picard, I actually write the Picard maneuver in one of the episodes that I rewrote. If people are interested in that, I can maybe make a video essay explaining that. So, with all that said, do you want to discuss what doesn't work?
Yes. I guess I'll start with just Bach's convoluted revenge scheme.
Yeah,
I get why you have to have a convoluted revenge scheme when you're the writer. You got to give your antagonist something to do. You got to make them seem really intelligent, like they've put all the pieces together, like they're 5 moves ahead. But here's where all those things fail. It would have been easier to just take a phaser and shoot Picard and kill him that way. You know what I'm saying? It's just like it eventually the believability, the bottom just falls out of that, and it. Yeah, Captain, what do you think? Yeah.
it's the James Bond villain problem.
Yes. Yes.
It's
Yes.
the James Bond villain problem. Overly elaborate and exotic death, but at the same time, an easily escapable situation.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And so that's the first thing that doesn't really, and this is like 9 years in the making. The quote unquote Battle of Maxia was 9 years ago. So this guy's been thinking about his poor son's passing for 9 years, and instead of getting some therapy on Betazoid or Betazed, he puts together this. I guess Ferengis actually their minds can't be written, they can't be read by Betazoid. So, and I'm gonna back up
No,
from that idea. Anyways, yeah, instead of doing anything else productive in the 9 years, like making a profit Ferengi style, he actually goes against Ferengi culture and gives away this salvage starship and enters into this really convoluted revenge scheme. And it just doesn't work for me at all. And then when you have the convoluted scheme on top of the thought control device, which is officially called, get ready for it, the Thought Maker, it just, I don't know. None of that works. You could have just given him the Stargazer, and then as soon as he booby trap it, so as soon as they beam aboard, it blows up, or something terrible happens, or Maybe you could have just taken remote control the Stargazer and shot at them from a distance and make them chase it into a terrible nebula and then have something. I mean, I know you can't kill Picard, otherwise you wouldn't have a TV show, but I'm just saying there are so many other ways to get revenge that are way simpler and more effective. And so yeah, that's just, it's hard for me to watch episodes like that and be like, that's a
Hmm.
smart Ferengi right there. That's a really smart Ferengi. But what about you, my friend? What doesn't work about this? Besides the horribly tedious pace. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your first line, but that's
No, it's good. The pace is bad, and I would argue they try too hard. They
yeah.
they tried they tried too hard with the introspection on Picard. His descent into madness, they try really hard. The headache thing gave me a headache.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe that's some sort of new special effect they were trying out. The attempt to sell the Ferengi as sinister, I guess, works somewhat better, but it falls
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
as you pointed out,
Slightly.
slightly. This is something where I think adding a B plot
Oh yeah.
that actually relates to the story would work a lot better because Jack Crusher, the the deceased spouse of Dr. Crusher,
Mm-hmm.
was a fellow crewman on the Stargazer. And you can't do anything with
Oh
that.
yeah.
You couldn't do anything with
Huh.
that. You couldn't examine Picard's relationship, especially with that deep fake sort of thing where they falsify the log
Yes.
and and basically the implication, which nominates that plot point for an award that I'm going to explain later. You can't do anything with that. The fact that Crusher's spouse might have died because of Picard's mistake, potential mistake, and you
Yeah.
can't do anything with that. Go ahead.
Wouldn't it be interesting if Bach actually forged Jack Crusher's logs and then made them contradict Picard's memory, and then Beverly hears these and is all of a sudden, oh my gosh, did
Yeah.
you? That just yeah. But also the deep fakes thing we know doesn't work. There's one amazing episode of Deep Space Nine where they go to incredible lengths to create a deep fake, and it doesn't even work. So it's like, yeah, it just doesn't work. It never has really worked. So yeah,
So yeah, having that kind of B plot would have worked really well, I think, or perhaps putting Picard on trial because of this new evidence, because it's not really established that. Well, okay, so in the interest of world building, this false Picard log is new evidence that could be completely damning to Picard and end his
yeah,
career. You can't do
yeah,
anything with that either. It's resolved in 10 minutes
yeah,
because of
exactly,
the
exactly.
technology you brought up. So that, from my perspective, this is something where you could use more plot than less, or a B plot to enrich Dr. Crusher's character, particularly because in the logic of the story, her deceased husband, and Picard were shipmates, and that could have done. But then again, bringing that up would have violated Roddenberry's commandment of no tension and no jealousy and no this and no that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, you're right. You're right. As cool as those commandments or whatever we want to call them from Roddenberry are, they really definitely get in the way of telling compelling character-driven stories from my point of view. But we'll see. We'll see. Um,
definitely.
Captain, you want to get to your award? Oh, I guess we got to that with that subplot. That's right.
Well,
That's
I didn't officially name it, but do you want me to do facts and facts first?
I'm all over the place, just kind of like the
Okay.
Lonely Among Us. But yeah, let's back up. Let's back up. Trek first and fast. Let's do it.
So the Stargazer Bridge is a fairly obvious redress of the USS Enterprise A.
Mm-hmm.
You take a look at the turbo lift, and it looks like the turbo lift in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. And the built-in consoles and the displays look like something from that you see at the very end of Enterprise, the Voyage Home with the Starship Enterprise A. The optics are changed a little bit, but it's very clearly that structure. That's what I got for first and facts. Do you, dear scholar, have anything
Mm.
else?
No first and facts on my side. Let's go awards.
So I got the award, the GNDN award. Now there's a little bit of an inside joke here. GNDN is what they used to write on the original show on any kind of piping or networking system. And it
That's
basically
right.
means Yep, goes nowhere, does nothing. So this is an award given to a story detail or plot device that is established but is of no consequence, has no consequence whatsoever. And that award goes to the fake log them tree subplot. It's brought up, has some colossal implications for Picard's career, and resolved in the next act. Not even at the end, in the next act. So the
Yeah.
ultimate goes nowhere, does nothing.
You almost kind of wonder if the episode came in like at 38 minutes, 36 minutes, and they're like, "Uh-oh, we need something," because a B plot definitely is usually established in the teaser or Act 1,
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you think about the last episode, Justice, it's basically meant the B plot's kind of the floating starship and the godlike starship until they figure out what it is, and it's basically name dropped in the teaser. Oh, there's this thing
Mm-hmm.
coming off the starboard side, starboard nacelle. And so yeah, that's it was established so quickly and then solved so quickly. It's hardly even a B plot. Um, okay, let's talk about Enterprise interiors. We have one of my favorite Enterprise interiors. I'm going to say that a lot. All these interiors are some of my favorites. The captain's quarters. That's where our episode starts, and I think it's a beautiful, beautiful set. We're going to spend a lot of time here. Um, in fact, we're gonna have a really long discussion in season 2 about the Prime Directive in the episode Pen Pals.
Oh yeah.
But also, okay, what I like about this interior, one, like I said, we're gonna come back here. They're gonna update it. Picard's chair is gonna get that Mendakin, I think that's how you say it, tapestry that's gonna go
Oh
over the
yeah.
chair, which is gonna be awesome. So really pointing out some details that are about to get updated. What else do I like about this? Oh yeah, I think thematically this is a nice set because Crusher is going to enter in, and we're going to have the opening episode conversation in the captain's personal quarters with the doctor and the captain, who in season 1 they're trying to drum up some relationships, some chemistry there. So I appreciate that it's going to happen, and then eventually, they're going to actually keep doing that, and they're going to have the two of them eat breakfast together, and that's going to occur in the captain's quarters, and it's also going to occur. I don't know if it occurs in Crusher's quarters or not. We'll have to pay attention to see if
Yeah.
breakfast goes down there. So we're going to be spending a lot of time in this space. I really love it. And yeah, it's going to get updated and continually used throughout the season. Unlike the old Starboard Lounge, which is never going to be seen again, sadly.
Yep. R.I.P. Starboard Lounge. So
Facts.
yeah, there you go. I'm borrowing what my students say. So, um, I this is an episode that is a good first start for setting a new convention for the show. It just could be done a lot better, and it will be done better. The episode with Worf, involving the Klingons that are a couple episodes ahead of us, I think, when we get to that, that's one of my favorites of the first season. I'm looking forward to that. So I'm thinking it's time to wrap it up, unless you have anything else to say, dear scholar.
No, I've got the list of episodes we're going to talk about next week. And I'm looking at them right now, and I'm seeing a Riker episode and another. You know what I'm saying? So I'm thinking I understand this formula that you just introduced. Instead of the ensemble, we're going to go to the individual. So that's fascinating. Shall I take us into that? What we're going to talk about next week?
Take us out.
So next week we are going to tackle Hide and Q, Haven, and The Big Goodbye. So that's pretty. Those are some very memorable episodes. Get ready for that, where you have a return of Q, for the first time. So that will be quite interesting to talk about his next appearance, because he was definitely one of the best parts of that pilot. Let's see if that remains true for Hide and Q.
Looking forward to it. Can't wait. With that in mind, I think we should wrap this up with thank yous and mahalo nui loas. Scholar, would you like to take us out on that?
Yeah, just want to once again give a shout out to Memory Alpha. I failed last week to mention that when I was in college, I got into being an editor for Memory Alpha as I was getting really, really into TNG. So I appreciate everyone who contributes to that community. It's an amazing community. Really helps me fact check some of the things that I'm taking notes on. So thank you so much for that. Also, a shout out to Trek Core for their scripts, their screen caps, especially those Blu-ray caps, so I can compare and contrast what I'm seeing to what other folks are seeing. And of course, to all our new subscribers and our former subscribers, listeners, commenters, we can't do this without you. We appreciate the direction you're giving us, some of the feedback as well. And yeah, it's been real. Thank you for joining us on the Captain's Yacht. We're about to park back with the main ship. But before we do that, Captain Kanaka, you got anything else you want to say?
Big mahalo nui loa. Thank you so much, as they say in Hawaiian. Really excited for this new frontier we're doing. Just to echo what our resident scholar said, thank you to all our listeners, and thank you, Memory Alpha, and thank you, Trek Core, for everything. Mahalo nui loa. With that in mind, live long and prosper. E malama pono. Be safe, be healthy.
Peace, and long life. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you. This concludes the light version of this episode. On behalf of Scholar Beta, we hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please stay tuned for deluxe versions of this episode, in which video footage will be interspliced with our commentary to enhance our podcast experience. With all that said, thank you very much for the support. Any feedback you give is appreciated because it helps the kids. And with that said, live long and prosper. E malama pono, and we'll see you next time.